a lot from me, and I want to stop talking for a bit and let our panelists introduce themselves a little bit more, but then also tell us a little bit more about why, in your view, why should communities consider piloting or adopting SolarAPP Plus and why you did it. But to help structure that, I'm going to just start with you, Byron, on this question. And then, Byron, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself in Houston a little bit before answering that question, and then I'll go to each other panelist after that.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Byron King. I'm the building official here in Houston, Texas. I've been in this position now for about a year, and pretty much when I started, the question about SolarAPP came into play. It was something that was, I would say, wanted by a mayor who wanted to implement this because of the complaints that he had with some of the things as far as time frame that we had with getting plans out. Now, I will say this, one of the reasons why I was kind of intrigued about it, and when I say I, the staff, that includes my staff here, is the reason of originally, if you look at the time frame that we have, it's about 9 days to do a set of solar plans to get it through our system. So once we went with it, and Houston is still in the pilot program right now, but once we implemented, we went from 9 days down to 1 day. So that was a tremendous value for the contractors and also the homeowners like that. They actually loved it that we were able to get the plans out in one day. Inspection wise, it really was not something that affected us because we have a 1 day turnaround on the inspections. So it was more on a plan review side. Now, when it comes to the program itself, and Jeff, please tell me if I'm going into other questions. When it comes to how we implement it into the particular system that we have here, it was not hard at all. It was just a matter of getting with the programmers and getting it instituted into the program itself. But once we got it in, it's very simple to use, and we move forward with it. Did that answer the question, Jeff?
It sure did, Byron. I think if you could speak to that comment about, Houston decided to pilot, would you say other communities should follow your suit? What do you think about that?
I would say yes. If anyone that is really even just questioning, I would say go ahead and do it. One of the things, and I mentioned this in a previous meeting, is that not to push SolarAPP, but one of the things that I do enjoy is that Jeff and his crew has always been there if there have been issues, if there's problems, or if there's something that comes up that we need their assistance on with the program. Because one of the things when we first went out inspection wise that happened was that the contractors either were not there or they would not have the documentation on site for us to do the inspection. So that was a real big rejection list for us. And that was the reason why there was a huge rejection list that we had at the beginning. Now that the people are getting used, the contractors are getting used to it and making sure that sometimes the master electrician has to be there, they're getting to know the system. So, if there are any questions, I would say yes. I would really look into the program if you want to add that.
Thanks, Byron. And from here, we're going to go to Nirma. We'd love to hear from you. Again, just if you would introduce yourself to the wider audience and then explain a little bit why your community used SolarAPP and why others should consider it.
Hello, thanks for having me here. My name is Nirma Safal. I'm with the city of Harrisonburg. We did the integrated format of SolarAPP with our permitting system, which is called LLAMA. I definitely encourage jurisdictions to try out the SolarAPP. For us, there is no downside. It doesn't cost the jurisdictions anything, and it really doesn't take a whole lot of time to set it up. So the value that you get from the system, I find, is very helpful. And couple of the things that really attracted us to it is the fact that we can count on the SolarAPP to update with code changes. And second, it provides a lot of points to SolSmart if you're interested in getting SolSmart designation for your community.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Platinum now requires some type of SolarAPP type instantaneous permitting system. So if you want to be the best of the best, as a lot of communities do in the context of SolSmart, then you'd need something like SolarAPP. But Nirma, I jumped in there. I'm sorry. Was that did that conclude your thought? I was so excited about SolSmart, I guess.
Yeah, that was what I had. I'm happy to answer any questions though.
Oh, don't worry, we'll have plenty more. And so from here, Eric, same question to you. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself a little bit more, and then of course, why your city adopted and why others should consider it.
Great, thank you, Jeff. So my name is Eric Browning. I am the chief building official here in Denver, Colorado. We are a medium-sized city of just under 1 million people within the city and county of Denver, the largest jurisdictional area in the region is quite a bit greater, but within our purview. We have been using SolarAPP beyond the pilot for about 6 months at this point. And we spent a lot of time with Jeff and NREL working closely to develop a level of confidence. And I'll reiterate what Byron mentioned, which is that Jeff and his team have just been spectacular from the support perspective in terms of answering questions, helping us understand how the SolarAPP Plus tool works, answering the questions that we had from the jurisdictional perspective in terms of the analysis of the solar PV systems, so that we had a high degree of confidence as we moved through our pilot and beyond. We are seeing an increase in adoption of the use of the SolarAPP Plus tool, and that is of great benefit for our customers. I think it's obvious at this point the nearly instantaneous ability to issue these permits is what is most attractive to our customers, as well as to our own staff. Previously, we were going through a solar PV electrical plan review process on all of these projects, including the what I would say is comparatively smaller residential rooftop solar applications. Now our customers have the ability, not the obligation, but they have the ability to use SolarAPP Plus. And within the 15 minutes it takes them to enter their information and their contractor's license through our permitting system, they can have the permit in hand. So that is literally saving weeks off their schedule, which saves our staff time as well. I'll be really excited, Jeff, next year to see some of this data with Denver and Colorado incorporated therein. That being said, Denver also has used an integrated model of SolarAPP Plus. We use Excella for our permitting system, and we have modified the customer interface within Excella to provide a pathway for our contractors to go in, enter the SolarAPP Plus approval ID, and work their way through our system in order to obtain that permit, again, in just 15 minutes of time. There are capabilities of the SolarAPP Plus tool that Jeff mentioned, which we have not yet explored here in Denver. It has to do with the capacity of SolarAPP Plus to handle larger kilowatt systems. There are some local and state restrictions that we have to apply from a legal perspective. But as Jeff mentioned, there are additional capabilities, and Denver will be looking to explore those in the coming months, again, in support of our customers' needs. I think that about covers it at this point.
Yeah, thanks so much, Eric. Great conversation there, and a lot of good points. And it just points to the fact that you can just pick the flavor of SolarAPP that you want. There are some questions in the chat. I just want to clarify for folks that SolarAPP is only for residential systems and residential rooftop mounted systems at that. So there's a box within which SolarAPP can play, and that's the box that it is in. But there's a lot you can do. And to Eric's point, a lot of variation in that box. so that impacts what jurisdictions can think of. But without further ado, Kimberly would love to hear from you about Guilford's perspective. Being one of our standalone jurisdictions, you have a unique implementation pathway yourself. So would love for you to take it away.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kimberly Norman Rosedam. I'm with the town of Guilford. I'm the building official here for about 4 years. Right now, the town of Guilford has implemented SolarAPP, their permitting tool to make it easier, safer, and quicker for solar projects to be approved, while also benefiting the contractors and the homeowners at the same time. Our standalone system that we have is because we don't have currently an online permitting system. We are upgrading to that. Hopefully we have it implemented by next year. So in the meanwhile, we are using a Stripe payment system that the applicant, contractor, and a homeowner can go to. They can apply for they can apply there on SolarAPP to become, I believe, like a member or part of their contractors list. And from there, they can submit their job, what they're going to be installing for their solar. So, and then they do their payment system through Stripe, which Stripe was already implemented in our accounting software, where all we really had to do was implement our fees and structure. And it was quite simple. With our current system that we use with Munis, we just have it in that we did the inspections, process that SolarAPP gives us on the inspection sheet is quite intensive, and it's great. Our inspectors love it, and all the contractors that are using it are doing better inspections. I will have to say they are passing a lot better. They are making sure that everything is grounded like it's supposed to be, and it's a lot less of having to do a re-inspection. So we are quite happy with the implementation of SolarAPP within the town of Guilford.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kimberly. Really valuable points there, because you hit on the key things, and I know it's in the chat too, so I'm just going to reiterate here, is that you'll have to, SolarAPP does issue the permit in that standalone model, and it does that through the use of the Stripe payment method, which Kimberly, you mentioned you had to set up, of course, to get the permit fees intake in your system, but then SolarAPP issues the job card, and then contractor can go out and install. That is SolarAPP issuing the permit. And then in everyone else's case, though, SolarAPP is just doing the plan review, and then Denver, Houston, and Harrisonburg are all issuing the permit within their own systems. So it just shows the different flavors of how to use SolarAPP. And each of you talked a little bit already about your process by which you implemented SolarAPP. And I did want to open the floor here just to reiterate again, for the team, maybe Byron, you had said it was actually at the beginning quite easy to implement SolarAPP into your permitting system. Is there any sort of barrier or challenge that you think communities should be aware of that kind of was a sticking point? Or do you think the whole, sort of the whole thing was more or less streamlined and not that difficult to carry forward in terms of implementation?
Well, one of the system that we use here is a system that it's a relative, we call it older system. It's called Integrated Land Management System, ILMS, that we use, and it's nowhere else in the country, and it was specifically written for Houston, Texas. I saw one of the questions that are going to come up is it comparable for N4? We are in the process of going to N4, which we're looking at the first quarter of 2025. So that's going to be one of the things that we're working on to integrate the SolarAPP into the N4. Now, keep in mind, the ILMS system or our standalone system is just the permitting of it. We will issue the permit itself, but the SolarAPP, which is separate, we use that, and we have not had any problems with integrating that along with our ILMS. And again, I hate to keep harping on this, with all the questions that we've had with my chief electrical and the chief that's over electrical, and also for structural, Jeff and his team has always been there to answer those questions. So if something comes up, and it's usually of a minor nature, where we do have if there are any questions at all. But again, because of the ease of use, after people get used to using the SolarAPP itself, it is a real simple process to move it along.
Yeah, thanks for that, Byron. And this time I'm going to actually, I'd meant to adjust it so we're not always going in the same circle. So Kimberly, I'm going to come back to you here and see a same question to you from the standalone perspective. Was there a key point in the implementation process that was more difficult or something that jurisdictions should be aware of? Even having said that, to your point, it was pretty easy to do. So just curious your thoughts on that.
It was solar was very easy to implement within the town of Guilford. One of the main things for us that I had in several development meetings with yourself and Matt Train was we always asked for an engineer's letter regarding for our installation of the roof before the solar is actually installed. We want to make sure that someone looked at the roof of the customer's home to make sure it is compliant. It's going to be able to handle that new dead load that's going on top. Plus you got this, wind load and of course snow load. We're in Connecticut and we get quite a bit of that. So that was a concern for us, not being able to receive that engineering letter that we usually get in the beginning. And we also get one at the end to make sure that the roof is still code compliant and it's going to be safe not only for installation, but also for the home and for the people that's going to be living there. Speaking with Jeff and Mike Train regarding it in our development meetings, I felt very confident regarding the process that SolarAPP has in place with the contractors to make sure they do go over the installations of the roof to make sure it is compatible and code compliant, that we very much felt secure on stating we can go with a project like this and have something like SolarAPP being able to issue the permits pretty much the same day or either the next business day, as long as they are a registered member and part of SolarAPP.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kimberly. And that's a great point because I think each of you kind of alluded to that there's some unique issues in all of your communities that we had to work through and talk through. And that was the whole point of this, is that, yes, there are customizations and the changes that we have to make to reflect the unique built environment of each location. And Kimberly's point too is really focused on the structural compliance checks that SolarAPP is doing and the areas of the code that we're applying, including being able to use the code for which, if your solar is under 4 pounds per square foot, that replaces a 30-pound live load because you're not walking on these panels, right? So there's a key provision in the code. And if we're talking, that again is the box that SolarAPP is working in. Is you have to be under that threshold, and if you are, then you have code opportunities for that. But I'm talking too much again, so Nirma, I'd love to hear from you too to add to this conversation on implementation challenges and solutions.
I think the primary challenge we had in the beginning was assuming that it had an API, which it does not. So there really was not. We didn't need programmers to make a connection between SolarAPP and our permitting system. The contractors, they apply through SolarAPP, they get their documents, they get their approval code, and then they go through our traditional permitting system where we created a special SolarAPP permit, which does all it requires is the upload of the documents and entering that approval code for it to then auto issue the permit. They pay our fees and auto issue the permit. So we made it more complicated by overthinking the whole process. Whereas really all we needed to do was create our account and enter our parameters that customizes for our jurisdiction. Now we, touching on something that Kimberly said, we require a letter from the Harrisonburg Electric Commission. So our applicants actually have to get that before going to SolarAPP, and they will then upload the HEC letter plus the SolarAPP documents into our system. So whatever amount of time it takes them to get the HEC letter, which is generally not very much, but that amount of time is then added to their overall amount of time, but not to our time.
Yeah, critical point. and bringing up, the integrated model, what we're talking about is just incorporating it into your existing permitting system. That's really what it is. Now, I will introduce for folks on the call here that we are engaging with a few government software vendors to actually deliver on an API, but that will be specific to those particular software vendors and whether your own internal system is configurable with that API. Otherwise, we'll continue with the model just uploading the documents, which has been proven successful for the thousands of applications that we've been submitting in the communities here and elsewhere. But yeah, Eric, I wanted to come to you too to see if there's anything else you'd want to add to this conversation.
Yeah, appreciate it, Jeff. Thank you. In terms of the integration of SolarAPP with the Excella system that we use here in Denver, we chose to create a unique pathway similar to as Norma described. We created a unique pathway for our customers to navigate the electrical permit for the product and having SolarAPP Plus compliance. That in and of itself took some time. We have a very large jurisdiction and technology services department that has different priorities. And so that was specific to Denver and our own capacity. It's not a reflection on the use or integration of the tool. With respect to what we asked NREL to do, they were very accommodating in terms of making the modifications and providing the verifications that we asked for within SolarAPP Plus so that the contractors that are using that specific to Denver can select the right dropdown, the right criteria. And so we have within the Denver specific SolarAPP options been able to customize that in a way, as Jeff has mentioned, has occurred with a number of jurisdictions across the country. I also wanted to speak to, because we haven't gotten into this yet, but it's absolutely relevant, the differentiation between the use of SolarAPP, the automation of the review and code compliance and the permit, and the other side of that, which is the inspections process. And Byron and I have worked together on this for a number of months, and we share similar experiences. There is a paradigm shift that's necessary, we find in most cases, with our inspectors because they're used to having, historically, a set of plans, still a set of plans, but now it's usually on a mobile device, and a one-line or a three-line diagram for them to refer to. And that is something that, as a jurisdiction, you have to work with your inspection teams, your electrical inspectors, your managers, to determine if you will require that one line or three line on the electrical side or not. In Denver, we went through in our pilot a process of weaning our electrical inspectors off the one line diagram. We are at a point now with the checklist that is produced from the SolarAPP Plus approval, where our electrical inspectors are using that exclusively. And so we no longer require these projects to provide a one-line or three-line diagram on the electrical side. But that takes a bit of work. It's again, a bit of a change in mindset. But once it was proven that the installations are code compliant with, NEC, NFPA 70, then everything is par for the course and we just keep going. So we've had really good success there. And I'll reiterate, as Jeff mentioned earlier as part of his presentation, that the approval rate that we're seeing for inspections that actually use SolarAPP Plus is greater than what we were seeing conventionally. So that's good for everyone. That's good for the contractor, it's good for the owner, and it's good for our inspectors.
Yeah, thanks so much for bringing that up, Eric, because inspection it's a critical difference, the checklist, in that, one, it takes the guesswork out of it because now everything you'd ever need to inspect is written out. So you just go line by line if you need to. It's all right there instead of interpreting the diagram and going out and inspecting on whatever the inspector regular processes for going through a project. And so but it is different. And I think Denver is a really great case study of how to work work through that and come to a solution, which is what SolarAPP is all about. When you implement new things, you want to make sure you're doing it right. So that's the first thing. And to Denver's point is we looked at both like and this is actually for every community, how do inspectors inspect? Does the checklist have everything that they would otherwise inspect for? And then to your point, then it's like, okay, well, why do you need those diagrams anymore? Because you're just looking at the checklist with all the information that you need. And so really, we were really excited to follow Denver through that process. And now at this point, I'd love to give every one of the panelists an opportunity to have some concluding thoughts about the impact of SolarAPP on your community, safety concerns we resolved, or anything you haven't yet spoken about that you think would be important for other jurisdictions to know. And so I think, Nirma, I'd love to start with you on this question for your concluding statement.
Our inspectors love the checklist. In fact, one of the inspectors has spoken with me about trying to figure out how we can do something similar or other things outside of solar projects, because they found that that is quite a useful tool. So it is bringing some innovative ideas to our team.
Awesome. Thanks, Nirma. And Kimberly, we'll go to you.
Oh, sure. Well, for SolarAPP, I have to say our average of solars that we have approved so far is about 980 permits, with 14 of them so far being by SolarAPP. And I say the inspectors love going out because, like I said, the inspections are going a lot smoother. The process is a lot easier regarding getting the permit immediately. This means the client, the homeowner is able to get their service turned on and being able to save money that way regarding energy consumption. And I know the main thing, I'm getting calls now from different solar companies. There's one that does it all the time faithfully through SolarAPP, but I'm getting other ones that usually come in or mail theirs. And they're now telling me that they're going to be applying now to be one of the solar vendors under SolarAPP, because they see the ease of it, they see the use of it, and the knowledge that they're going to gain on what they need to actually provide when we come to do an inspection. So they also see the value in that also. So like I said, I've just been very happy with the use of using SolarAPP within our process system.
Thank you, Kimberly, and we're very happy to have you, of course. As our first jurisdiction piloting in Connecticut, same with Harrisonburg and Houston, Texas and Virginia and Denver. Actually, we have first piloters all across the board today. And so Byron, same question to you for any concluding thoughts.
I would say look at it kind of two ways. I would say from an inspection side, I agree with like the other panelists. The inspectors have really, once they get through the process of learning something new or different than what they're actually going through, having to look at when they get out on site, they thoroughly enjoy doing the inspections for the SolarAPP. From a plan review side, because that really has been mentioned, my plan analysts have basically are enjoying it, because then they don't have to look at these plans. They are looking at other plans. They don't have to worry about this, because if the only time they really look at it, if it's something of a revision that is taking them outside of the SolarAPP program itself, then they'll get a revision, or then they have to, the person has to, because that means that they're not honest when they initially did the SolarAPP application. So it keeps everyone honest, but once you get through the headaches, again, I would thoroughly have any jurisdiction to try it out. It's something that we are enjoying. So far, we've had close to about 300. We have approved about close to 300 applications or permits for SolarAPP. And we'll more than likely in the real future, once we finish getting a couple of bugs out, that we'll be going full time with this. But once we get through that, yes, I look forward to it to be something ongoing in the city of Houston.
Awesome. And I saw there's a bunch of questions about the inspection checklist in the chat, so I just went ahead and shared screen with one of them. This is the solar and storage inspection checklist. And so it is much more detailed than the solar one is, because it's a much more complex type of system, but I figured I'd share this with you because it is the more robust of the two because they are more complex. So folks on the phone or on this can see this. We also have, or I think we'll put a link in the chat to where you can see a bunch of inspection checklists for solar and storage to answer questions about that. But now I will stop here and thank the panelists for all of their great conversation and open it up for Q&A session. Laura, because I know there was a ton of feedback and questions, and I know you were answering a ton of it as well. It's a very dynamic chat. But Laura, I'm happy to open the floor to questions we want to answer on the floor here.
Sure. So maybe we talked about the integrations, but there've been several questions about it. So maybe just a little bit about the software that does integrate with SolarAPP right now, what people are using.
Awesome. Yeah. So I just wanted to clarify, you heard from 3 different communities and they all use 3 different softwares. And that just goes to the point that SolarAPP can actually be incorporated with most softwares that are online. So Guilford does not have an online system that can issue an instant permit. So they had to go the standalone route. But every other, community on this call and a lot of communities using SolarAPP use, 100 different software vendors. And so long as you issue a permit online and you have the ability to have the contractor pay online and have the system issue the permit immediately after payment, then you're good. That's all you need. And then it's just a matter of a couple of steps for how you set up your permit record for SolarAPP. So it's not very complicated if your system does those things. Like if you already allow for an instant permit to be generated for like water heater replacement, you just use the same workflow you would do for that or any other permit you issue automatically online. We'd use that same process for this. And so we work with, Tyler Technologies, OpenGov, Central Square, Acela, Llama, you've heard Houston's homegrown system, right? We've worked with a bunch of homegrown systems. So if your software, it's really the question you should ask is, does your software issue an instant permit today? Or can it have that capability? And if it can, then the integrated approach is right for you. If it can't, the standalone model is right for you. If you're transferring between processes, systems, from one that doesn't to one that does, the standalone model could be the bridge, the same way that Guilford's using it as the bridge now. And there are instructions for a lot of softwares on our website for how to connect the two together or incorporate SolarAPP into it, and they're all very consistent, the same way I've described it here.
Just going a little bit in order of things that when people ask questions, will the standalone implementation of the program allow generation of reports? Also, how are cities keeping records of permits issued with SolarAPP? How do we avoid issuing duplicate permits for one address?
Mm-hmm. Byron, do you want to chime in?
I was going to say, look, because it's integrated into our own system, we keep track of, we created a standalone permit for the SolarAPP, for the solar permit, excuse me, so that we can keep track of it. So we know how many permits have been sold, how many, have been rejected, but that is pretty much in the SolarAPP itself. But we keep track of it, and it's something that you would have to have your software company keep track of it, create a permit type itself so that you can keep track of it.
And then Kimberly, in the standalone model, do you want to just chime in a little bit on how you track permits in your internal system after they're issued in SolarAPP?
Sure, no problem. We actually received an email from SolarAPP stating that there has been a new application that was issued, and they would give us the address. Once we received that, we actually implemented into our Munis database. So this way we do have a tracking feature. So when somebody does eventually call in for an inspection for this solar, the admins are able to find it, and they're able to schedule with the inspector to go out there. And we're able to keep track on when it was issued and when we actually came in for the final inspection. So it is a little bit, if we had an automatic system like some of the other panelists does, it'd be probably, I guess, more seamless. But since we have the standalone, we have to do, that's just the extra part we have to do, which is really no big deal. Our admins don't have a problem registering, putting that in, and also putting in the inspections.
Thank you.
And that's the process if you're in that standalone model for how you'd have to do that. And I think there was a question about, having multiple permits in one location, and SolarAPP doesn't have an ability to stop projects at the same address. And so that is something that Kimberly, you'd have to navigate on your admin side, but I don't think you've had that issue of appear.
The only issue that I did have that was somewhat similar with one of the customers that used SolarAPP is that they actually had to do an upgrade. So they had already applied for one type of application to be installed on the home, and then they realized they needed a little bit more panels to be installed, so they had to do an upgrade. So that information, they contacted us, they sent us the revised revision of the new plan of what's going to be installed, and we just had to readjust it in our system of, like I said, we do it manually. So in regarding trying to keep track that this is going to be doubled, we actually have a property master in our system that we can see what's currently at each property of what the permits are. So if there is a double of 2 permits of a solar, we would see both of them and the time that they were entered in. So this way we can see if there's a double, if there's a mistake or anything like that, we'll be able to catch it on hand from there.
Great. Next question, more of a roadmap question. Jeff, are battery storage or main panel upgrades included in the SolarAPP system for residential?
They already are. So everyone can pilot those if they so choose to do so. You can pick your flavors of SolarAPP. And I think if we've got any California jurisdictions on the call, it's important to think about how the market is shifting. So towards more solar and storage, especially in that state, and actually across the country, more storage is coming. So we've had some communities say, hey, why aren't we getting that much volume? It's like, well, what are your permits looking like? Is there a lot of storage in those permits? Yes. Well, if you don't allow SolarAPP to approve those, then SolarAPP's going to have less of an impact. So it's really up to you to determine what you allow in SolarAPP, and then for contractors to be able to use it.
Going down the list, some of them have been answered. There's a question about availability in New York and New Jersey. Yes, I can just answer that. It's available in every state, so we can do that. Let's see.
I think the only thing to add to that, Laura, is you just have to be on the 2018-2017 code cycles or implementing those model codes in your own state or jurisdiction. In addition, we also permit in the 2020 National Electrical Code and the 2021 I-codes. We'll be very soon allowing 2023 NEC, and that gets back to Nirma's point that we actively incorporate new code cycles. So, and Laura's pointing out that most jurisdictions in New Jersey and New York are on one of the code cycles we've reflected, and that's why it's available, but it is predicated on those code cycles. And some communities actually are working, even though they may be on a different model code, they're actually working with us to allow SolarAPP to be used in their community instead of those codes the older codes that they otherwise are enforcing.
I have a question here. I have a $2.3 million electric storage system going in. Is SolarAPP ready for this?
Is that a residential project? It sounds like this is a commercial system. And SolarAPP can only approve residential and not multifamily at this time.
How quickly does SolarAPP integrate mid-cycle code amendments?
We just did that. California does those mid-cycle codes, and so we've implemented those well before the cycle started, the same way we're implementing the 23 code well before it was started. 2020 and 21 codes as well. So we have a track record of hitting them all before they are enforced. And that's our plan and continuing going forward. It doesn't, you can always implement the code more faster than it's enforced somewhere, but there's not necessarily a need for that. So we implement them as they become enforced.
Okay. How is the permitting fast-tracked with SolarAPP?
So, well, everyone here spoke to the fact that SolarAPP delivers an instant plan review, and then the contractor spends 15 minutes getting a permit out of the jurisdiction system. So that's how it fast tracks permitting. And I think on the Guilford side, same thing. It's SolarAPP issues the permit, they can go right to installation right then and there, the second they get that approval. So that's about as instant as it gets.
Jeff, there's a question about whether SolarAPP Plus will address commercial and multi-family structures in the future.
Right. I should have specified because there's a couple of questions. Well, why aren't you expanding it to these other applications? It's not that we aren't interested in that. I think one of the key things we've talked about today is safety. So it's one thing to automate permitting and do it the wrong way, and it's another thing to automate code compliance and do it safely and ensure you're enforcing the code properly 100% of the time. SolarAPP is in the business of approving projects that are code compliant 100% of the time, not 50%, not 75, 100% of the time. And so working and expanding into commercial, multifamily, and industrial is always a part of the plan for SolarAPP. The vision of SolarAPP is to automate all clean energy permitting safely. Safely, important safety term there. And so it's just going to take time and work to take the code and try and figure out requirements to implement it effectively. And that's why we started with solar. We expanded to solar and storage, and we're moving out of formal pilot of storage in September, proving the fact that we are very committed to safety. We are not letting anything out of the lab that is not guaranteed to deliver a code compliant system every time. And that is the guarantee and the trust we are, or the vision of SolarAPP and what we stand for is to do things automated, but of course safely. And that takes time.
Jeff, there are a number of people on this call clearly from the installer community that are asking how they can influence their local jurisdiction using SolarAPP. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think I'd go to the panelists here, but I think just telling, going to the communities for which you do a lot of permits and saying, hey, you could have done this, I could have done this in SolarAPP, I wouldn't have had to come in here, you wouldn't have had to review it, and we could save you some time. I think that is one of the biggest things to do, but I'd love to hear from the panelists if they have additional thoughts on that for what contractors could do to help you make a decision.
I agree with that. Just to jump in, that once at the beginning nobody had heard about it, but once we went out and says, hey, the main thing was, okay, look, this is going to save you. You don't have to go through our regular process in order to get a permit for your solar panels. And if the proof is in the pudding, you can use our jurisdiction or any other panelist jurisdiction. I mean, for Houston, we went from almost 2 weeks down to 1 day. I mean, and you can tell people that, and I guarantee you that the installers or the SolarAPP guys are going to be, the solar guys are going to be like, okay, I'm on board with this. And that's what happened in Houston. They heard it. They don't have to go through the process. We're good. We're in.
Well, for me, Kim, in town of Guilford, I actually found out by it from our innovative and forward-thinking selectman, Matt Hoey. He happened to hear about SolarAPP and he contacted me to see if it would be a good fit for the building and land use departments. And once I realized what it was, I said immediately, yes, let's do it. We were approving a solar application within like at least 7 days or less, but to have it instantaneously that they're able to actually get it in hand the same day or the next day and be able to start work, I thought that was a huge benefit practice for the homeowner to get their energy savings on immediately, and for the contractor to keep going on with their project for the work. So yeah, it was pretty much a thing. If somebody really wants to have some sort of endpoint regarding, speak to your building official, speak to the selectman or your mayor to let them know that this exists and have them take a hard look at it. And I'm pretty sure they won't have a problem adopting it.
This is Eric in Denver. I agree with the communication. Part of the selling point of SolarAPP Plus is the efficiency that it provides not only to the contractor, but to the jurisdictions. And so it's very clearly a win-win, and almost what it comes down to, depending on the number of solar designers and installers that you have in your community, the point of potential delay is the capacity of the installer to actually put these systems on roofs. It's no longer, which was the case in Denver for some time, it's no longer the jurisdiction inadvertently being a bottleneck because we have limited capacity to do plan review for these, residential rooftop PV systems. That goes away. And so that barrier or limitation is a great advantage to the jurisdiction. I want to speak just a little further real quick on the safety aspect. It's something that Jeff mentioned and a number of others. In Denver, we are very confident in the program, and we spent months in 2022 working with NREL and Jeff and members of his team on the programming side, on the engineering side, on NEC NFPA 70 code compliance side. We spent a long time with Jeff and his team to ensure that 100% compliance that he refers to. And so we know that customers that are using that are doing so, and the product that's coming out of the use of the tool is a code compliant product. So that's really a great way to go to the jurisdiction to help its adoption.
Great. I think we're actually a little bit past time now, but that was an excellent question to end on. Thank you, everybody. Thank you all of the panelists for being part of ICC's roundtable today. Thank you very much, Jeff. And thank you, everyone, for attending. And please don't hesitate to reach out to ICC, to your GR person, to your ICC rep, to anyone on the NREL team. Happy to provide more information. There are several links in the chat, and we will send them out as a follow-up to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.